By the end of this video, you will learn how to use Figma's auto layout to create the hero section of Notion's website. We will also combine Figma's Dev Mode with the auto layout to fine-tune our design elements. We will also learn how to use instance swap property to extend our variants. You can watch our auto layout navbar tutorial to see how we designed the navigation bar. So are you ready to learn more about auto layout? In this video, we will be breaking down the auto layout essentials into 8 easy steps. Step 1. So far we managed to create the navigation. Right now we have to take the hero section and add it just below the navigation. So the first thing that we need to do is for the hero section, we have now with Notion, we do want to turn this into a chip. Chips are basically like buttons, but they're all rounded corner, which means we would exactly have the same button dimension, but everything would be rounded. Also, we would have another color. If we take a look at our colors on the right hand side, here we see we have secondary, which is 94 and 50. This is the secondary color that we want to use. So in order for us to basically create a chip, what we can do is go to the links, hold Option and duplicate. And for our chips, we can rename this the links to chips and then basically highlight both of them. And then if we just drag this a little bit out and scroll down here under appearance, we can just like give it 500 to make sure it is rounded. Also for chips, we don't want it to be 8 pixels because chips are a bit smaller. So we want to reduce the padding from top and bottom from 8 to 4. And since we reduced it, if we take a look at it closer here, we see that it is a bit smaller than the actual button and everything is rounded. So all we have to do is basically select the first chip and go to the fill section. Here on the fill, we have basically primary. We want to switch to secondary. We want to select the text and then again go to the secondary and then select the text color. Also, we have another color. If we take a look at our default and then if we scroll down under fill, we have another color called tertiary. So we can select that and also select the text and then go ahead and select white. After selecting the white, now we have a purple chip, which is a bit lighter, and a blue chip that is a bit darker. Step 2. And finally, we have to reassign the values. If I take a look at the chip component variant, here we have true and false. We exactly want to keep the same values. The only thing is instead of black, we want to turn it into purple. So here we would just rename this to purple and we exactly keep everything the same, which means if I want to test it, I can hold Option and bring one out. And then as you can see right now, instead of black, we have purple. So we can turn it on and off. And then this way we can switch between them. And also we can edit the labels as we type. Not only that, because this variant set is exactly created the same way as the link, if you decide to switch between chip and link, you can click on that and switch between link. And then as you can see, the text is preserved. So you have also the ability to switch between link and your text is preserved. And then by going back to chips, you can switch between them with no problem. This is possible because we have our text component property created as label. And then we linked both of the text on chip side and on the link side all together. Which means if I go ahead and for example, click on this, if I scroll down, you see we have the label all lowercase. If I rename this to something else, the link would be broken between them. So make sure your component text properties are named the same. This way you have easier time doing instance swap and everything would be preserved. For a quick demonstration, if I click on the chip here on the label side, if I double click and just increase the first letter by L, like capital L label, if I click outside, now if I go back to my chip instance, if I click on it and click on the chip, now I want to do a swap to link. Right now you see the text is not preserved. So I'm going to Command Z that. Here I would double click again on the actual master chip component. Double click here, making sure that the text component property is exactly written the same way, all lowercase as label, which is exactly the same way as if I click on the link, we have all lowercase written as label. So this way, again, if I do a one final test, if I click on my chip and then just write sign up, and then if I do an instance swap to link, here you see my sign up is preserved and I also have the ability to switch between black and white. I have the ability to switch between purple and blue. Step 3. Since we managed to fix that, we can now move on to basically replacing the chip component with the actual text. In this example, we have now with Notion AI. So what I would do is I would copy that to my clipboard and then I can click on the chip and on the right hand side, we have the label. So I can Command V that to paste the text inside the label. And as you can see, we have our chip created. Here we have 2 text values. So what we need to do is just increase the font size and font weight to make them stand out. So what I would do is I would click and drag this outside. We no longer need this, so I can simply delete that. And then I can click on that, move to the typography section and increase the font weight to 61 pixels. Also, I do want this to be center aligned. And if I click on the font weight, I do want this to be extra bold. So now if I zoom out, we basically have Notion with AI that would be placed to the top, and we have the text that is promoting Notion, and on top of that we have the navigation bar. So what we can do is we can delete the wireframe navigation that we created previously. We can turn the navigation into a component itself by going and clicking on the component. We can hold Option to drag this out. So we have an instance, Command and X to cut that, and then move to the Notion AI and the text that we have, the hero text. We can highlight both of them, Shift and A to create an auto layout, and we can double click and rename this to section. And then we want to make sure that we have our navigation placed to the top. So here I can click on the section, Command and V to paste that. And as you can see, the section has the chip, the text, hero text. I can double click to rename this to hero, and then we have the navigation on the left side. So if I use the arrow on my keyboard, I can push the navigation to the top, and I want to basically give this whole thing a background. So here we have the section, we have the nav, but I don't want the nav to be part of the section, which is part of the chip and hero. So what I need to do is create a parent auto layout and move the navigation outside. So what I would do is click on the section again, Shift and A to create another auto layout, and double clicking and renaming this to body or container. In HTML, we refer to the most parent element as body. So we have body as the most parent element. We do want to make sure that the body has no padding. So we would basically reset all the paddings to 0, and we can control the body's width. In this example, for a desktop size, we can increase it to 1400 pixels, and we give this body a background color. In this example, we go to fill and then search for gray 100. And now you see that our website is beginning to shape. So what I can do is now I can click on the navigation bar. Here you see we have the body on the left hand side, and we have a section, and what I need to do is basically click and drag the navigation out to bring it to the body. And as you can see, if I take a look at the website that we just created, we see that the whole body is actually wrapping the navigation and the section, and the section here is wrapping the chip component and the hero. Also, what I need to do is if I go ahead and try to look at this, the navigation is not responsive. Here, if I try to resize this, the middle section is responsive. However, if I click on the navigation, I have to make sure I go to the width section on the auto layout, and from fix switch it to fill. Step 4. So I went ahead and I cleaned up our Figma project, and as you can see, I added another page called the website. Basically, this is the final layout of our website. And if I go ahead, for example, click on the navigation, here you see we have something called local instance. That means if I click on that, that would bring me to the main component. And as you can see here, we are navigated to the components page, and I also cleaned this page up. Here we've so far managed to create link, chip, and navigation component, and we are reusing this in our website. So if I go ahead and click on the website, here you see we managed to create our navigation in a responsive way. If I also take a look at the left hand side, we have the most parent element renamed as body, because in HTML the most parent element is body, and inside that we have a navigation, and then also we group the section with auto layout, again chip and hero. Also, as you can see in the auto layout, we made sure that it is set to center align to the top, and we made sure that the properties on the width is actually set to fill as well, because if you have this as fixed, and if I try to resize the body, you see the whole middle auto layout is not being responsive. So you have to make sure you select the section, and then you click and make sure that is fill as well. And by doing that, you are now basically having a responsive website. Also, what we need to do is add a space between the navigation and the section. Step 5. So if I go ahead and visit the dev mode, if I try to look at this and closely inspect it, here you see we have a bit of a space here, and in the dev mode you can always switch to pixel and rem. In this example, I do want to make sure that I go to the inspect settings, and instead of rem switch to pixels. This way I can inspect my website a bit better. Here you see we have 16 pixels of spacing between the Notion AI and our element here, and if I hover over that on the top, here you see we have only 10 pixels. So we do really want to have more spacing between our Notion and the text, as well as the entire section and a navigation bar. So let's just go ahead and do that. We can switch back to the design mode, and we can click on the section and increase the spacing from 16 pixels to 24. And what you notice is if I click the body auto layout and I take a closer look, here we have that 10 extra pixels of gap between the elements. So you can increase that to 48. By doing that, you make sure that any elements that you add actually has 48 pixels of gap between them, which means, for example, if I have another section in our body, I can simply click and Control D, and as soon as I duplicate that, you see there is a 48 pixel pixel gap between all of the elements. Step 6. Since we duplicated another section, we no longer need the content within the section, the chip and the hero. We need to replace this with a testimonial. And what you notice is the testimonial is already an auto layout and is already being set to the horizontal direction. Here you see it is being set to horizontal, and there's a gap of 24 pixels between each of them. If I zoom in, we need to fix a couple of issues with this. First of all, we need to make sure that this is center aligned. So here, if I basically cut that testimonial using Control and X, click on the second section, Control V to paste it, we have our testimonial added. Also, we no longer need the chip and hero. So what I need to do is click on the chip and hero and delete that from my auto layout. Also, what I do want is here you see that we have this free for teams to try. If I use Shift and R to bring the ruler, I can basically drag this out, and here you see we have this text starting from here, and what I can do is also drag this out here. It would be nice if we have all of the logos only take all the available space that we just dragged out, so this way our layout is more aligned. Moreover, we don't need the Notion logo, so what I need to do is click on the Notion logo, delete that, and making sure that if I click on the testimonial, it is center aligned, and by doing that we are almost fixing it. The other thing that I need to do is making sure it is center aligned from the middle as well, so it's not only center aligned to the top, center aligned in the middle. And by fixing these two values, we managed to now create a more consistent look. However, what you notice is if I again try to zoom in, for example, the Uber logo actually has a height of 48 pixels. However, if I click on the 1Password, it only has a height of 19 pixels. So this is not consistent in terms of the look and feel. So what we need to do is make sure that all of them have the same height. So this way they would be exactly center aligned. And in order for me to fix that, I'll click on the first image, which is Snowflake. And then here we see under the layout, we have a height of 24 pixels. So I would want to reduce all of them to 18. In Figma, you can use K to bring up the scale panel. And then here you see under height, I can just basically reduce that to 18 pixels and it would automatically reduce that. Since I fixed the first one, I would need to fast forward and repeat that for all of them. Here on the Toyota, I basically would select it, bring the scale panel using K and then reduce that to 18. And then I can just repeat that, press K on my keyboard, do 18 pixels, step 7. So I fast forwarded, and as you can see, I also renamed all of these logos to their proper name so we have easier time identifying them. Also, if I click on any of them and press K on my keyboard, all of their height is now set to 18 pixels. So if I close this and try to zoom out, here we see that we are able to exactly reduce that. And if we want this to be perfectly aligned to the rulers that we just placed here, what we can do is select the testimonial and making sure we reduce the height. Here, as soon as we reduce the height, you see it exactly snaps to the rulers that we just created. If we don't have the rulers here, if I try to make it snap, it doesn't work. So I'm going to Command Z that to basically bring the ruler back, and then I would select the testimonial, and I want to make sure again it is set to fixed, and then by doing that it would automatically snap to the ruler. And instead of hard coding any values, I will click on the gap and I make sure it's set to auto. And after setting it to auto, it would exactly expand it all the way to the edges. Another fix that we need to do is basically remove the excess padding that we have around the testimonial. So we would click the padding and make sure we reset it to 0. And then as you can see, we have our testimonial created. Step 8. So if I hide the ruler using again Shift and R, now we managed to create our body, which has our navigation, our hero section, and basically we have the testimonial section. Also our section 2, we do want to add ends as well, and then our pricing. So if I go ahead and visit the starter, we so far managed to create the sections up top. We only have the toggle section and the other 4 cards to be created, and once we design that, we basically would add that to our website and we can see how finally our website looks like. You can also do final improvement. Basically, you can click on the text here, and since this is a bold text, you can reduce the amount of line height that it has. Here we are setting it to 61 pixels in font size, so for line height we can reduce that to like 64 pixels, and by doing that, if I zoom in, here you see that the line height is reduced. Also for letter spacing, I can click that and then reduce that to minus 0.5 pixels, and then if I basically apply that, here you see that our text is being closer to one another. Because we are using a big font like 61 pixels, you should always reduce the line height and letter spacing. This way your font and typography looks more aesthetic. One other improvement that we can do here in the chip, it is not being stand out. Even though we have a different color, you can immediately tell the difference between these colors. However, it would be nice if we actually make the chip bold. So what I can do is select the chip, go and hover over the local instance, and it would would bring me back to the chip component that we have. Finally, what I can do is highlight both of the text and make the font size a bit bigger to 14 pixels and make the font weight a bit bolder to semi-bold. By doing that, now if I go back to the website, if I basically try to zoom out, now we see that now with Notion AI has more emphasis. We can preview this in our browser by basically clicking on the body and making sure to go on the preview. Here we have two options. We can preview it using a quick preview. If I click that, you see now the preview panel appeared. So now you see I can basically resize the website and I'm able to see how it looks like. Also, what you can do is instead of preview, you can actually present it. And once you are brought to the presentation mode, here you see that it actually opens the entire screen. And what you can do is basically hover over that tiny settings icon and making sure you are previewing it as an actual size. But what you notice is the actual size is overlapping the screen. Here you see it's actually overflowing, so I have to do a bit of a scroll. So Figma has this built-in option. You can do it like a responsive view. And if I go ahead and do a responsive view, you see now we have our website created, and this is how we are seeing it in the responsive view. Again, the responsive view only works the best if you have everything built with auto layout. That's why we are emphasizing on building everything with auto layout, because what auto layout does is allows your elements to be adaptive and responsive. And since we go to actual presentation mode, this would give us most accurate representation of how it would look like if we build it using HTML CSS. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more design tips and tutorials, and let me know what you think in the comments down below.